the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2006 supernatural horror StayAlive, as directed by William Brent Bell. The movie sees a group of gamers get more than they bargained for when they get their hands on what they believe is an underground game called StayAlive. They know nothing about the game except that they probably shouldn't have it, but allured by such a temptation and in honour of their dead friend who'd only just played the game hours before his untimely and bizarre death, they get together online and enter the mystifying and terrifying gamescape of StayAlive, where every move they make could just be their last, quite literally. Soon after playing, the friends start to experience visions that seemingly stem from the game. See where this might be going? Considering it to perhaps be a form of psychosis or psychological event linked to the game itself. Not knowing that indeed the game is itself alive and based on seemingly true events. As their reality becomes distorted and those around them continue to die in strangely similar ways to their avatars died in the game, the group must look to the game itself for answers in the ever-deepening mystery that started the moment they booted up. So, this one, to be honest, isn't nearly as bad as it actually sounds. It is a mid-level horror for sure, yeah? One of the run-of-the-mid kind of 2000 movies that kind of follow a specific formulaic device, but at least this one is somewhat original and does kind of dare to delve into the geeky world of video games at a time when they were kind of just becoming a little bit more mainstream, yet firmly sticking to that kind of nerdy stereotypes gaming prevailed with for some time, me included. Now, the film is dated, the FX, well, from the PlayStation 2 era, that should give you some idea, but in this I found it quite a nostalgic trip. The film made no attempt, in fact, to make the gaming world seem any more lush than it actually was. The graphics in that respect spoke to the time and the era of gaming in which it is actually set, and for that, actually seemed realistic. Like we were actually following these characters through a genuine game of its type. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but that is actually something that I really did enjoy. For as low budget as it actually seemed, I really did think it worked in this respect. What we didn't have characters from, we weren't seeing the game from a character's perspective as though it was real life. That happened in real life, it gets confusing. But when I'm saying about the gamescape, when you actually go into and play in the PlayStation 2, it was like you was in a PlayStation 2 game. That's exactly as it was. But I did think it actually worked in that respect. It obviously took inspiration from other horror games from around the same time, especially the likes of Resident Evil, very much so. But it was a clever way to kind of meld supernatural and video game horror elements with a kind of weirdly Buffy-esque facade. In fact, I thought it was a pretty reasonable, in fact, video game adaptation of a game that was never made. As somebody who has kind of an affinity for games of that era, it does kind of speak to me, even though I'd probably be pretty rubbish at the game itself. Did it work all the time? Well, no, not entirely, but it brought a reasonably young and preppy cast with a reasonably eerie story. Like I said, middle-of-the-road kind of stuff. The characters are animated enough and serve their purpose well enough to keep things moving. Now, I did see somebody spotting an earlier version of Windows as they were booting up the game, but I couldn't kind of quite catch the version. Given the time period of the film, let's just say that they should have probably considered upgrading if they were running Windows, either Windows, Millennium or Vista. That probably would have accounted for pretty much most of the system's supernatural behaviour. Yes, from the start, they were doomed before they even pressed the power button. Anyway, that's enough of my nerdy gripes about Windows systems of the past. Best left forgotten, best left there. Just saying that probably the reason for the curse, if they really, really thought about it, it saved them a lot of time. Then again, the installation probably wouldn't have done. It is laced with jump scares. They're pretty much the movie's bread and butter throughout, being almost wholly reliant on them. Some are cheap shots for sure. Some are fairly effective though. Again, a mixed bag really. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's the gaming world for you. I did find it creepy at times, I'm not going to lie, sad as that may sound. The kills were fairly inventive, although we didn't kind of get to see much on screen, probably to keep the rating low. And at times the CGI used, particularly in one moment, was absolutely shocking. Shouldn't have bothered. But for the most part, I did actually find it quite investing, all told. It's a sort of Resident Evil kind of game that meets The Ring, I would suppose. It does seem a pretty decent mystery as kind of things unfold, and the integration of the game into a real-world setting is actually decently achieved for the most part. It certainly follows through with the ideas in general. I think I would have liked to have kind of seen it delve into the lore a lot more. Now, I do understand there is actually a director's cut of the movie with an additional 15 minutes of footage, including additional characters, which I believe may actually answer many of the things left in the ether with the theatrical cut, which alas was the version I frequented. In the cut I watched, we never got to know where the game came from, nor why a game at all, how the game gave the curse its power, or what any of the real motives actually were. It is, in that respect, the film also kind of seems to make up its own rules as it goes along. That element is probably one of the most frustrating aspects of, as it, it kind of just ends up throwing half of its own rules that we kind of established out of the window just to suit the moment in time. That or randomly we go from knowing nothing about the curse to becoming instant experts. Those kind of films, they're a bit harder to swallow. It isn't all that consistent in that respect. Overall, I really did think the movie captured the essence of video games from that era, which it came pretty well, decently close to providing, for the most part, a decently invested story. A cast of popular TV series personalities at the time, and a reasonable pacing. The idea was sound, a video killer game, or killer video game. A video game killer? Anyway, a killer video game which was passably executed for the most part. Although, agreed, the movie really couldn't settle on what the actual rules of the game were, nor what the curse actually was. It certainly had a lot more potential than we got, and quite a bit more that would have kind of piqued my interest further was missing. But that might be my fault for not researching the available cuts before diving in. Lesson learned. But it certainly had a lot more scope than it ever really explored, resulting in a watchable, if middling and sometimes muddled affair. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for my movie reviews, trailer reactions and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.